Good evening, everybody. Welcome to all of us, or all of you, to this special meeting of the Facilities Committee to include participation by all county board members for, we're going to study RFQ 2015-002, Facilities Condition Assessment Documentation and Capital Planning Study for Champaign County. And we will be listening to the presentations from three firms this evening. And with that, I would ask for the call to order, and we've done that, and I'll now ask for the roll call.
Schwartz. Rosales.
Here.
Quisenberry. Kibler. Hardkey.
Here.
Anderson. Maxwell.
Here. Let it be noted that Mr. Kibler has arrived. The next item would be the approval of the agenda, and I don't believe there are any addenda, but motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I want to start by taking care of some business I should have taken care of a little earlier. It's not official business, so I think it's okay. But I want to thank the members. I want to express my thanks to the members of the Facility Committee for the work that you've performed the last 6 months. Your active and engaged discussion during the May 5th committee meeting and your recommendation to the county board concerning the deferral of the next phase of the Sheriff's Office Master Plan is an example of the way board committees should work. I also want to express special thanks to both the policy chair and also the finance chair for their thoughtful advice during preparations for the May 5th meeting. Again, thanks to all of the committee members and the policy chair and also the finance chair. I should remind also the committee and call to the attention of the other board members present that both jails are not included in this study. The firm of Gorski, Reefstack, and Kimmy performed much of the assessment during the Sheriff's Operation Master Planning. Any required additional work will be performed as an addition to the firm, to that firm's present contract. Also, much of the required assessment for the Champaign County Nursing Home has been completed by James Gleason of GHR during his study of the mechanical and electrical systems at the home. That part of the nursing home study will be written out during the preparation of the final scope of work for this project. Our task tonight is to listen to 3 different presentations and select an architect engineering firm that you feel will provide the county with the best facility condition assessment information. The county is seeking to complete a facility condition assessment and capital planning study to determine and evaluate the immediate, short-term, and long-term capital renewal requirements that can be expected over the next 25 years. There were 8 total teams who submitted materials for consideration. Our selection committee, Deb Busey, County Administrator, myself as Chair of the Facility Committee, and Dana Brenner, our County Facilities Director, evaluated each submittal. The teams were rated using a rating evaluation form similar to the evaluation form that you have before you tonight. The 3 teams receiving the highest total points were then invited to present to our County Facility Committee meeting and the other board members tonight. We will have 30 minutes for each presentation, during which there will be no questions, to be followed by 15 minutes of questions if needed. Between presenters and evaluators here this evening, they'll be followed by questions And then we'll have a break between the three, each of the three. Please focus your questions specifically to the presenters and the information they have provided in their presentation. We must also try to maintain consistency in the type of questions asked of all presenters. The RFQ 2015-002 document required each team interested in submitting information for consideration to attach a list of references that our county administration could call upon for further information. The information collected from those phone conversations has been set before you as additional information to assist you with your evaluation efforts. You each have an evaluation form, and we ask that all the board members present fill out a form, including committee members. The rating column for each presenter is where you will evaluate each criterion via rating between 1 and 5. The rating scale is as follows. 1 is for poor, 2 fair, 3 is for average, 4 is for good, and 5 is for excellent. You do not need to total your columns, which would be your score times the weight. Our Excel spreadsheets will take care of that for us all and probably do a lot more accurate job than we would anyway. We shall collect the forms from you after the third presenter has completed their presentation and finished with all the questions and answer session. Please note that you must complete all 3 evaluations and be here for all presentations. If not, your evaluation cannot be included in the compiled total at the end of the evening. I appreciate Dana for helping me with these instructions. And are there any questions before we proceed? If not, I would ask that the first firm would come before us and present. That would be the firm of IGW.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Riley Glarum. I'm with IGW Architecture. Very quickly, Scott Wachter with IGW Architecture, Jake Wolf with Engineering Resource Associates, Jim Gleason with GHR, and Chris Billing with BCA, and Tom Burns in the back there from PCA. Want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here. This group has been around the county for a while. I'm sure you see some familiar faces. And we understand the significance of this project and the valuable information that it will generate, and then help ultimately the county in the future for some strategic capital planning. So we're excited to have an opportunity to participate in that. I'm going to start moving through the presentation. This first executive summary portion, I'm going to treat it just like that, and I'll probably, oh, thank you. I'd like to just kind of introduce a number of subjects that we'll expand on a little bit later in the program. So here you see, I'd like to, again, introduce the team. IGW is going to lead and coordinate what I think is a talented group of architects and engineers, and IGW will address the architectural end of things. We have Engineering Resource Associates and Jake, who is going to provide the superstructure and substructure, in other words, structural aspects of the project. GHR, Jim Gleason, is going to head up the mechanical electrical engineering portion, and Chris Billing is going to head up the site civil and landscape. For right now, I just want to give you what we think are highlights of our team qualifications, and that is the firms that comprise our team have had decades of experience working with one another and the county, which we think is a good thing for the project. I don't think there's any other team that will have the in-depth knowledge and experience with virtually all of the county facilities that we're going to be assessing. This is truly a locally based firm. IGW is right in downtown Urbana, so we have the flexibility and the availability to meet any kind of need. And then our team is designed to exclusively involve the principals from each one of the firms, and in some cases, senior level architects and engineers. This is the kind of job that demands that, we think. So that's how we've structured our team. We're proposing a four-phase scope of work and methodology, phase one being project startup, phase two being the actual assessment of all of the existing facilities, phase three, the analyzing of the data collected and the documentation of it, and then phase four, actual pulling the report together and presenting it in whatever forms we need to. We'll talk more about that later. From a standpoint of ADA compliance, we have a great deal of experience and feel like we can represent the county quite well in terms of negotiating with the US DOJ. They have developed their list of deficiencies based on the 2010 ADA standards, and I think you all recognize that, I think without exception, your buildings predate those standards. So that's something to talk about later. And also I want to note that the Illinois Accessibility Code applies to us as well. And there are some conflicts between these two standards, and the most restrictive will rule. So we always have to be cognizant of the Illinois Accessibility Code as we go through this process. Value-added services, we're a group of architects and engineers. We happen to be really good at existing facility assessment and analysis, but we're not, we don't do facility condition surveys exclusively. We don't go around the country, so we don't bring any proprietary software, facility management software to you, but we certainly know our way around spreadsheets and bar and line and pie charts, so we can put the data into the form needed. What we have done is we've provided almost every conceivable architectural and engineering service to the county. Some examples up there, and we think there are a couple of services we'll talk about later that will provide some added value. We think effective project management and communications has three keys to it: establish leadership team, organize, control, and monitor the work, and provide thorough and timely communications. We'll talk a little bit more about each of these later. And with respect to our ability to meet the schedule, the only way to meet a schedule properly is to upfront plan the work and then work the plan. So this is a preliminary work plan schedule for the project, and we'll again talk about it a little more detail later. And then from proposed report structure, we've prepared a preliminary table of contents for the project as requested in the RFQ, but really we believe that the report contents is going to flow out of the scope of the work, the data gathered, and the required deliverables. And we fully expect that the contents will be adjusted as the research and the report develops. So with that, I want to go into a little more detail about the firm and the individual qualifications that we bring. And I'll talk about IGW first. IGW is a local downtown Urbana firm. We were established in 1967. We're 8 strong. We've been serving the county for a long time. And basically, we bring a strong general professional background in programming, planning, design, and construction. So that's our background. Over 70% of our workload is with expansion and renovation projects. And because of that, we have, over the years, become highly skilled in pre-design, existing site and building condition assessments, and their analysis as a critical prerequisite to successful facility planning and facility budgeting. This was work that actually transferred into a real project where the owners needed accurate assessments and accurate budgeting. So we feel that we're very strong in that, and it applies directly to this effort. As I've said, IGW has over 20 years of work experience here with the county. We bring an unequal depth of knowledge, experience, and resources regarding virtually all of the site and building facilities at the county. We were working on the courthouse block when the sheriff's residence and the annex building were still there. We worked on MetCAD when we were trying to decide whether the 9/11 facility was going to be located at the Champaign Police Station or in the Champaign County Office Building. We recently, I will tell you, we were not the designers on the new Champaign County Nursing Home, but we have done some work there, some remedial work recently. We did a number of studies and ultimately put ILEAS into the old Champaign County Nursing Home. We were working at Brookins when the microelectronics owner was here before you guys purchased and occupied. We did a little bit of planning for this very room we're sitting in tonight. And finally, and not too long ago, we helped you develop a RFP for a design build procurement thing for the Champaign County Storage Building. Very specifically, we've done a lot of facility condition assessments before, and these are a couple of examples. They're in our submittal as well, but we did a facilities inventory capital planning study for CUMTD. We've done safety surveys for the couple of school districts, which is a survey and assessment of all their facilities. And recently, we did a master plan update out at Parkland, which had some of the same components to it as you're asking for here. With that, I'd like for some of my other team members to talk, and first it will be Jake from ERA to tell you a little bit about their qualifications.
Working in. Twice.
It's blinking.
Red and green. Hold it down. Borrow. That's easy enough. Thanks. Engineering Resource Associates was it merged with Fraunhofer and Associates as a local Champaign structural engineering firm. I've been working my entire career with Fraunhofer and Associates / ERA. So I've done many of the projects, worked on many of the buildings that are in the facility study. I anticipate that many of the things that we do on these buildings as a part of this team will advance upon some of the things we've learned in the past. Many of the building rehabilitations that we've assisted other folks with on several of the buildings. We've investigated material defects, including currently looking at the satellite jail wall panels there. We've done on-call investigative services, such as fire damage to the county highway building, vehicle impact on the salt dome. We've done expansion studies regarding the downtown jail. We've also done existing structure capacity studies on areas of the courthouse for floors that wanted to be reinforced. We've also worked on historical renovations, specifically the clock tower at the courthouse.
Okay, now it's my turn. Most of you will recognize me from our work with the jails. One of the geothermal project that's over at the Fleet Maintenance Facility. We're really happy with that project. It works well. It's nice to go over there and have people say nice things to you about some of the work that you've done over the years. Riley briefly mentioned the work that he's been doing at the new nursing home. Unfortunately, I've done a fair amount of work out there myself, working with the staff to identify deficiencies and so on, which kind of highlights one of what we think is our strengths, and that's our ability to develop a rapport with the physical plant staff. It's important for us when we're trying to figure out how things work or don't work, that we hear it from the people that have to live with those systems. So we see that developing in this project, in this study, that it's going to take some good conversations and some lengthy conversations to get this project done properly. So I'll leave you at that.
Okay, maybe this one's working. Okay. Burns Clancy and Associates has been here in Urbana for 40 years now, and for nearing 35 of those years, we've been providing some sort of services or working on projects here on the campus, the East Campus. Goes back as far as surveys of the original county poor farm and all, but there's very little county infrastructure or projects out here that we have not in some fashion touched over the many years. Just to name a few, the East Campus Master Plan, juvenile detention and the adult detention facilities. After that, fleet maintenance building we worked on, and with regards to the new nursing home, we didn't work on that project. We did some projects that served some of the facilities, off-site storm sewer and water main loop to complete that. And then we've done some forensic investigations after the construction of that. So we have a bit of knowledge there, but there's, over the many years, there's, again, almost every project or every facility on the campus, and including the downtown courthouse building, we have a lot of knowledge, so we've already rounded second base, at least on our understanding of what's out there to begin with.
Thank you, Chris. A little bit of information about the personnel on our team. I will organize, direct, and manage the effort. Scott from IGW will be the lead surveyor, analyst, and cost estimator for the architecture side. We have also assigned Sharda Panditi and Rick Kroll from our office. They're both senior project architects with our firm to assist in the survey and documentation efforts. Sharda brings 10 years of experience surveying all of the Urbana School District 116 buildings and following up with the remodeling and life safety work associated with that. Rick has done a number of complex expansion and renovation projects for us, including a couple of recent efforts here at the county. Jake is going to be the lead surveyor, analyst, and cost estimator on the structural side. John Fraunhofer will enter in if there are any forensic investigations to do, and he'll be pulling quality assurance for Jake. Jim will obviously be the lead surveyor, analyst, and cost estimator for mechanical, electrical. Brian Finette is an senior electrical engineer who will be assisting Jim. Chris, obviously, lead surveyor, analyst, and cost estimator for site, civil, and landscape, with Zach Schmidt assisting him. You asked for qualifications, and I'm giving you IGW reference, or you asked for references. These are IGW references. I encourage you to call any or all of them. Urbana School District, Parkland College, Village of Savoy, Cunningham Children's Home. The common thread between all of these references is we've worked for all of them for the shortest duration is, I think, 12 years for Parkland College and over 30 for the school district. We've done every conceivable type of project for each one of them, including facility assessments. And I think I would attribute our longevity to doing consistently good work for these folks. Getting back to the scope of work and methodology, I'm going to try to highlight each phase just to give you a sense of what we're thinking about the scope of work. In phase one, this is the project startup. We're going to confirm scope and parameters and management approach with the leadership team. Gather and review our resources, and then conduct a kickoff meeting with all of the designated county representatives. And after that, phase one would conclude with performing a detailed reviews of all of the existing building plans and resources we can gather and help the county gather prior to inspecting the buildings. Phase two is the actual assessment phase. And we would actually conduct a Phase 2 kickoff meeting before engaging in this to make sure we can visit the buildings properly and we have access and that sort of thing. And then, of course, we proceed with the on-site inspection of all the facility assets, site and building. Upon completion, that's probably about a 3-week effort. Upon completion of the assessments, we would again meet with a leadership team that was developed to review preliminary findings. And then after we develop consensus with that, we'd begin to enter the preliminary system and component condition findings into a county-approved data management spreadsheet, which we'll talk about. Phase 3 is the actual analysis phase. After the initial data entry, we would need to conduct the necessary analysis of findings and meet with the county to do a number of things, discuss and finalize scope of required repairs, and discuss the finalized prioritization of those repairs, if you guys are familiar with the RFQ. We would then enter the final data into a county-approved facility condition spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet, along with the facility condition information in the spreadsheet, that allows us to begin to develop different funding scenarios, which can consider different rates of asset reinvestment and the total amount needed for a capital funding plan. Towards the end of Phase 3, if everything is in place, we'd prepare a 95% draft report and submit it for preliminary review. Phase 4 then basically takes that, incorporates any revisions to that 95% report, and we follow up with the required formal presentations, or submit a final report, follow up the formal presentations. One important note I'd like to bring forward tonight, recent discussions have indicated that maybe this group ought to review or at least lay eyes on the facility condition materials that were prepared as part of the sheriff's operations, such that the satellite jail and the downtown sheriff's facility, correctional facility, can be incorporated into this document so you have a comprehensive document and numbers to begin your strategic planning. Here is an example of one of the deliverables. This is one of the important deliverables, a tongue twister of a name: facility condition assessment, capital renewal requirements, and opinion of probable costs. Basically what this does is it has a list of all of the scope and components for each facility. It provides the age. It talks about the remaining useful life. We make a decision on its condition as we assess it: unsatisfactory, fair, or good. We have comments relative to those assessments, and then we take all those repairs and we break them, we prioritize them with the help of the county into the immediate, short-term, and long-term repair priorities. And I should say one of these will be done for every facility, and each area category of information will be looked at, including civil, site, landscape, exterior building elements, which would include substructure and superstructure, interior building elements, fire protection and plumbing, mechanical and HVAC, and electrical. So that's a huge deliverable as part of this study. The next deliverable is what is termed the Facility Condition Index. Basically a facility condition index is a metric where you basically divide your current repair costs by your current replacement costs, and it gives you an indication of what kind of shape the building is in. And this is a key tool for, again, sort of looking at asset management strategies and funding initiatives. With respect to ADA compliance, I'm going to let Scott talk to you a little bit.
On the bottom there is a checklist that we often use for existing buildings. When we're starting just about any project, we'll walk through, if it's a remodeling or addition and renovation, we'll walk through and see what kind of issues we have with the existing building. And again, we have to look at both the current ADA 2010 standards and the Illinois Accessibility Code, because there are differences. Illinois Accessibility Code was originally modeled on ADA, but is a little more restrictive in some areas. And now the ADA was revised in 2010, so there's a few more differences than there used to be even then. And one thing on existing buildings, a lot of times we can look at alternatives for delivering the services and not have to, particularly if something's really hard to change, sometimes there's some other options that we can look at. And we have been involved in, like I said, just about every renovation and remodeling project we start, do an ADA survey. So with that knowledge and experience, we can advocate for you in discussions with the U.S. Department of Justice and hopefully help work through that process. We have taken a quick look at the analysis and the settlement agreement that you have with U.S. Department of Justice. And we think some of the items are incorrect. For instance, in the courthouse, I know there's a lot of those ramps are only 6-inch rise, so you don't need handrails, and they're asking you to provide handrails. And a lot of the items are, the variances are so minor, I'd really like to look at those in more detail and go out and measure that stuff myself, make sure. I mean, I saw some handicap parking spaces, which were 2.3% slope compared to 2.08 is allowable, so that's a pretty minor variation there. And then just a note, I mean, a lot of your facilities were built obviously before the 2010, and there were changes. So you are being cited for a lot of items that were not, current when the buildings were built or remodeled. So
So that was one of Scott's schemes that was rejected.
that may not be quite accessible. I don't know.
Slope is more than 60.
Okay, so with respect, getting back to the value-added services, I think as you go through this capital planning process, asset management capital planning process, one of the services that we could bring to do, if something comes up during this course where you actually identify the need to modify a site or a building, expand parking, or actually change a building's function, for some reason it changes, we have the ability to program those needs and cost estimate those needs and then incorporate them into the plan. And then as a design team that has worked together for over 20 years together at least, we can quickly assemble to address any critical repair or emergency needs that you have today or that come up as a result of this study. So those are our value-added services. Again, back to project management and communications, the 3 keys. In terms of establishing a leadership team, this is the leadership team for us, the principals of the firms. And a leadership team is basically the review and decision-making body that steers the course of the project. And the county needs representation, obviously. And that representation could come from the board. It will clearly come from the facilities committee. And there might be other representation, maybe from building maintenance or other people who are leading directors of their facilities. But the point is it's a group that stays together throughout the process and reviews materials and makes decisions. In terms of when you have multiple people and multiple buildings and the kind of task set that we have for this, organization, control, and monitoring the work is critical. We will employ a number of methods and techniques to do that. The first and foremost one is to jointly establish a work plan up front with the county and understand everybody's roles and responsibilities, because the county will have roles just like we do. Then probably be one of my responsibilities to continuously monitor scope, cost, and schedule as we move through this, pull quality assurance and quality control on our service as it evolves and our deliverables. We measure our deliverables to make sure they're transmitting the right information in the right way to you. And then inherent in our team, because we're going to be exclusively executing this work with principals, it should automatically go smoother. Our experience should pay some dividends at this point. And then it's important to maintain the continuity of your project personnel from beginning to end, and we promise to do that as well. And finally, communications. They need to be thorough and timely during the course of a project. It starts by establishing county consultant roles and points of contacts. It's maintained through scheduling regular coordination and progress meetings, probably with the leadership team. And then you need to memorialize all the issues raised and actions needed and decisions made through immediate documentation and distribution of reporting to all the parties involved. With respect to the preliminary work schedule, you can see the phases are in blue, and the total duration of each phase is shown in orange. And every task that has to take place within each phase is shown in black. They all have their time starts and their time finishes. And also, we're beginning to allocate responsibility for the various tasks. So this particular schedule shows the services starting on June 22nd and a formal presentation of findings to the board on I believe it's November 3rd. And we certainly can commit to that schedule. We think we're inherently efficient in terms of addressing your schedule requirements for a lot of reasons. First, we already have established working relationships with county personnel, including building staff. We have, again, prior experience on all the facilities. Again, the exclusive involvement of principals and senior personnel. Our team is close and responsive, and should, for some incredible reason, our team fall behind at any point in time, the combined capacity of our firms allows us to ramp up our human resources to address that problem. And then we work well together. We've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, so we're efficient in our own communications. Back to the report structure. Here's our preliminary table of contents. It has an introduction. It has an objectives and approach section. It has a summary of findings. It has capital renewal funding scenarios. It has definitions and references. There's a lot of metrics that you will understand eventually associated with facility condition analysis, and then there's an appendix. The reason I've boxed out the capital renewal funding scenarios is that it's another critical deliverable of this project, and that is once you have your repair and renewal scope of work, costs and prioritizations, and your facility condition index figured out, you can then begin to analyze different funding scenarios, funding strategies for bringing facilities back up to speed. This just gives you, I don't know if these would be the final scenarios, but here are some scenarios. Scenario one is don't fund anything and see what happens to your facilities in what period of time. Scenario two is at some point, we're going to know what our facility condition index is for each building and for all buildings total. We can have a scenario where we fund to maintain our current FCI. Maybe not a good idea. Scenario three is discover a facility condition index that is satisfactory and fund to that. And then scenario four would be fund your facility, repair of your facilities to a no deficiency level. So we will know those numbers, or we can generate those numbers. How are we doing? We okay? We're there. Okay. Yep, wrap it up. So we've just put a few ideas together why we think we would be a good selection for the county. We've done work here before. There's been a high level of satisfaction on the work that we've done before, so that's a good thing. Over the years, we've provided some timely advice and assistance, not just on the major projects that everybody wants, but on the daily facility-related needs that keep organizations running smoothly. We call that the go the extra mile factor, and we've done that for the county in the past, and we'll continue to do so in the future. The firms and the individual team members have decades of experience working successfully with one another and with you. That's the people factor. That will make us efficient and cost-effective. We have an excellent track record in early cost modeling and rehabilitation estimating. The accuracy of these numbers is very important to you. People who know what they're doing need to be involved. We are a truly locally based team. We can provide a quick start, and again, we have the flexibility and availability to meet a changing schedule. And for probably the fourth time, we have unequaled knowledge, experience, and resources in connection with your portfolio of facilities. And again, our efforts are going to be directed and executed exclusively by the principals, and these are the same principals who hold the institutional memory of your portfolio. So we think we're the best prepared team for a thorough, efficient, highly collaborative assessment of existing facilities, which will give you the most accurate, reliable information for doing your future planning.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Now-
we went over.
Thank you for your presentation. Now we have time for questions. Are there any questions from the board or the committee?
Be happy to answer. Patsy.
Patsy, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the presentation. My focus question is on the following. You're telling us how well you know all our buildings and a lot of data that you have on our buildings. What protections do you put in place among yourselves individually and as a team so you don't relax in your acuity of looking over the buildings because you've been in them so many times and you've reviewed them so many times? That's very easy to do when you keep going back and forth on projects.
Well, it's our professional responsibility, first of all, to put fresh eyes on the buildings. I would tell you the knowledge and experience that we have relative to these buildings is actually going to result in a deeper, more thoughtful assessment, because I was telling somebody before the meeting, you guys take a rap for sometimes not taking care of your facilities. The truth is you've done a lot of work on your facilities. It's been maybe a little shotgun approach more than you would like, but we're knowledgeable about the buildings to a greater depth. In other words, we know where you've done some work and you don't have to spend the money, and where you will have to spend the money. So I'm not quite answering your question, but I think our knowledge, we don't have any checks and balances, but we have this knowledge that we will apply. We know. Jim?
Let me add a little bit to this. Mechanical, electrical stuff has to work. So when I walk through a building, and I intend to do this myself, by the way, when I walk through a building, one of the things I can see with my eyes is there's design problems. You know, there's problems at the satellite that I picked up just walking the roof. You know, like, do you guys have problems with compressors blowing up here? Yeah, we do. Okay, here's why. You know, so we bring that to the table. And I mentioned the rapport that we have with the physical plant staff. The people that have to make these buildings work are the people that we want to talk to because they know what the problems are. Now, I'm not saying we're going to rely on them exclusively because we frequently know more about the underlying physics and so on in some of these systems than they do as people who have to make it work on a day-to-day basis. But they become part of the team, and they bring some perspective and some knowledge of the building to the table that anybody walking through there in one day may not get. So it's important to partner with people and develop these relationships where you can find things out. Did I answer your question?
So that would be a checks and a balance.
Other questions, please? Sam, please.
Thank you. Just in comparing these reports, one thing that stuck out to me is that One of the proposals says that they could be done by the beginning of August, which seems like a pretty big percent change from the other reports. So I was wondering what your professional opinion was on that kind of timeline and whether it would be possible to do such a thing in that time frame effectively.
Done by the end of August, did you say? The beginning of August, so they would have, they would start services June 22nd and be done by the middle of August. Okay, I would suggest to you that that is going too fast. We can certainly do better than the requested schedule in the RFQ, but somebody who is not as familiar as this team with those facilities, trying to diagnose everything in that, diagnose, document, and present in that time period, I think is being overly optimistic, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, could you guys just give me a little bit of information on what kind of experience you have dealing with green and sustainable solutions? I know as we look at our county buildings going forward, ideas that are going to reduce our power bills, that are going to reduce future maintenance costs, things like from green roofs and white roofs, even up to where solar panels might come in useful. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how you plan on incorporating that into your plan?
I'll address it first and you can go. That's precisely what we did for the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, is we were directed to every time that there was a repair or renewal or system or component replacement required as part of the assessment, we were to examine what sustainable strategies might apply to that work. And those were discussed, both from a cost-saving standpoint and an initial cost standpoint, and then a decision was made as to what direction to take.
Grant funding opportunities were looked at
Yep.
as well.
And I mentioned the geothermal system over at the fleet maintenance facility for a reason, because I want you to know that we do a lot of that kind of work. As a matter of fact, it seems like that's about all we're doing these days. Even to the extent in the jail study, when new construction was proposed, that's proposed as geothermal. So we're advancing along those lines pretty much on a daily basis.
If you're familiar with Mass Transit District headquarters, their East University site, a lot of the ideas that came out of that capital plan were implemented, including, a white roof. We put geothermal at their headquarters, and we also did a permeable paved parking lot, which was relatively pricey, but MTD decided to do it.
Other questions? I've got one or two. You've covered the tight schedule that we're going to be operating under. And I saw that you have a staff of 8 in your office. You've explained to us that you believe you can achieve this schedule. And again, I just noticed that the staff seemed a little bit, you're fairly efficient, I'll put it that way, fairly efficient in your office, with only having 8 people. But you do, again, can assure us that you can achieve this schedule.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other question that I have is, we've gotten reports of varying time frames from near-term, intermediate, long-term. How far out are we talking about long-term with your estimate here?
Well, we followed what was proposed to us in the request for qualifications, which I think was near-term was in the next year, and the short-term was, 1 to 5 years, and 5 years and beyond.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're, right now, that's not to say that that's where we'll end up, but, yeah, we were just replicating what was
Thank
asked
you.
for.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I would like to thank your team for presenting. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We always appreciate the time you put forward. We know it is an expensive proposition for you to make these kind of presentations. So we're always deeply grateful for your efforts. Okay, I think we can take a short. I'll, may I have your attention, please? We will now move on to the next firm that will be presenting to us this evening. And I have cards for Mr. Munter, P.E., and also for Kenneth Kabeda. Kabeda? I'm sorry. We appreciate you coming before us tonight and appreciate the effort that you've made in putting your presentation together, and we're looking forward to hearing it. So please proceed.
The one with the little picture of the guy talking on it? Can you guys hear me now? You guys can hear me without. No, we need it. Oh, you need it for the TV? Okay. Sorry. Got it. Well, then I'll sit right here and talk into the microphone. All right, so we appreciate being here. We don't often get to do the 7 p.m. meeting, but we've done a few. So we'll try to keep everybody from falling asleep during this. So first of all, I'm Matt Munter. You've got my card. I'm a mechanical engineer, been with EMG for 15 years, and we're going to tell you a little bit about who we are and how we do this type of work. My part of EMG is I'm principal for everything that we do in what we call our asset management division. So that's everything we do with state and local governments, higher ed, and K-12 nationwide. Ken?
I'm Ken Colbita. I'm an architect. I've been with 14 years with EMG, and I'm in their on the asset management side, doing these types of facilities.
Deb, is this working okay?
You both need to use your mics, though.
Okay.
And that one.
So, I'm Ken Colbita. I've been 14 years with EMG. I'm an architect myself, and I'm involved with the asset management side of our company, dealing, doing these types of facilities, state, municipality, government type facilities. So.
All right, so we're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. There's a lot to talk about. We know you guys have questions. So, Ken, you keep me on track.
Okay.
Give me every 5 minutes. Give me a update. All right. So EMG, we're a national outfit, and I'm not sure if you all got to read our proposal or not. National firm, been around for 28 years. This is what we do: facility assessments, life cycle studies, master plans, integration with CMMS systems. I don't like to explain who we are by saying what we're not, but we're not a design firm. We don't do specs for buildings. We're not dirty boots construction management firm. This is really a good fit for what we do. About 50% of our business is with commercial property owners and lenders who support them. So Marriott, for example, is a client of ours. We looked at 20 acquisitions for them last year. Ken and I work on the side of the company, about 50% of the company that does these kind of studies for state and local government, a lot of kindergarten through 12 schools, a lot of housing nationwide, and that type of thing. Federal government as well. So we call this our logo slide. And for obvious reasons, you should recognize a few of these folks. These are all clients that we've done very similar projects to what we're proposing to you. Ken and I worked on most of these together. Cuyahoga County is one where we're doing an ADA assessment. They've been cited by Department of Justice for noncompliance. Arlington, same way. Montgomery County, same way. State of Vermont was a statewide corrections assessment. So feel free to ask me questions about any of these. Bureau of Indian Affairs was a neat one. I didn't know until we had that project that the federal government runs kindergarten through 12 schools nationwide. They do, on Indian reservations and on DOD campuses. So this contract is about 30 million square feet that we look at on a 3-year rolling cycle. And what comes out of our assessments directly impacts the funding that gets requested at Congress, and then how it gets rolled out back across 200 K-12 schools on different tribal properties. So this is some of our current Illinois experience. So Chicago Public Schools, I don't know if you all are aware, but Chicago Public Schools was ordered by the state to do assessment of all their schools for life safety, code compliance, as well as long-range capital planning. They're required to look at code compliance at every building in the system every 2 years, and we're the firm that does that. So that's about 700 schools if you count the charter schools. So I've got 3 teams up there doing, it's a mechanical, 2 architects, and a junior person. Cook County Housing is an ADA compliance project. That one, they were cited by Department of Justice and HUD for noncompliance with ADA and 504. We're helping them get their resolution agreed to and then implemented there. So I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories. We don't have time to go through them all. Arlington County, as far as what we've done with them, is probably our best reference. Anybody been to Arlington County, Virginia? Arlington Cemetery is there, the appropriate this last weekend. So Arlington County's a close-in suburb to Washington, D.C. They've got about 3 million square feet of buildings. They've also got a pretty robust parks and rec system. So the first thing we did for them was a full facility condition assessment and 10-year capital plan. While we were there, Department of Justice came under the Project Civic Access and wrote a big report and cited them for noncompliance with ADA on a lot of their public access buildings, courthouse, libraries, et cetera. So we became their ADA third party, and one thing that I want you to know about that is I think you all are currently negotiating an agreement with DOJ, is that correct? So I don't know if you've got a consultant helping you do that, but we were in that role for Arlington County. DOJ was okay with us coming back and saying, you know, you've got this book of findings, we agree with some of them and we don't agree with some of them, and here's why. So we really prepared a plan for Arlington that had 3 pieces. One was things that we don't agree with and the county's not going to do. Things that we agree with, but the county's not going to do right away because they have other plans for that building, and that building's long-term not going to be in place, so we're not going to spend capital funds on ADA repairs. And then the rest of the buildings, yes, we agree on the findings. Yes, we are going to make repairs and remove those barriers, and here's the priority in which we want to do those repairs. And DOJ was fine with that, and that's the way we rolled that out, and it really helped the county because it reduced the amount of things that they were asking to fix to about 1/3. So we can talk in more detail about that one if you'd like. That one had Asset Calc is our in-house database, and we're proposing that for you all as well. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over City of Columbus, although that's a good current one, also with Asset Calc software deliverable, life cycle costing about 4.5 million square feet, a lot of similar types of facilities to you. Montgomery County, Maryland is another one that I think is the identical scope that you all had in your RFP. It's a combination of long-range capital plan. It's a tie-in to their maintenance management plan, but they also were visited by Department of Justice. Actually, when we started that job, that was the first thing we were asked to do, was look at ADA and prepare a plan that they could present back to DOJ that was a workable plan. So we did that for them. Along the way, we did energy audits of every building in the portfolio as well. Did you all do energy audits in the last several years? Did you get any stimulus funding, ARA funding for energy? Okay. We did an awful lot of federally funded, actually the funds sometimes were administered through the state, but there was a lot of stimulus money that came through in the form of energy audits, as well as money for retrofits. But we've got that base of knowledge to bring to you as well if we do this project, to work energy upgrades into your long-range capital plan and show you where you can leverage incentives and rebates to help get some of those projects running. Chicago Schools, I told you a little bit about that one. Like I said, we've got 12 field inspectors in the field right now on that project, and we've been on that project for 3 years now, so we're our second cycle running through all the buildings. All right, so those are kind of our where we've been and why we think that experience is similar. Anybody have any questions on that? We don't mind questions. It's interesting if.
We'll do questions after you make your presentation.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. All right. So this is our org chart. So I'm the project executive. My role is to make sure that number one, when we sign a contract with you, that everybody on both sides of the table understands exactly what the scope of work is and what the deliverables are going to look like and what we're committing to. We've got an ADA team there off on the side. Ken is going to be running our field team. This slide lists our team, so we call this our measles slide. So across the top, folks with facilities condition assessment experience, ADA, cost estimating, and experience on projects here locally. If there's one takeaway I want you to get from this slide, is the years of experience. These are not college interns. These are all folks that are licensed in their field and have seen a lot of buildings. So project understanding. So from reading your RFP and talking to you, we understand that you've got 20 buildings on your list. You're looking for a comprehensive conditions assessment. You're looking for a firm that's got some corrections experience. Parking, paving, landscaping is a big part of what you're looking for. You've got some parks. You're looking for a full architectural, structural MEP, that's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing review, and for us to develop costs to repair not only items that are past their useful life in a deferred maintenance mode. That's what we call items that are past their replacement time but still operating. Those are items that we want you to have a plan for and a cost for repairs so you can put together your capital plan. Anything that's life safety we'll address as well. And if you've got some systems obsolescence, that's a factor for us as well, where you've got systems that no longer support the program in a building. We'll talk to you about what the current replacements are for those. The other big part of your project is ADA. And accessibility compliance. You need somebody to help you put together your compliance plan. That needs to tie into your capital plan, so it's coordinated. You're not removing barriers in buildings that aren't in your long-term plan, and you're not doing it outside of your long-range plan. And I think we've got the experience with other counties and with DOJ to do that with you. So project timeline. Can you guys read that? Probably not, right? So I've got a couple hard copies that are bigger. If you can pass those around. I got up out of the chair, but I'm going to sit right back. So those are a little bit bigger. So, the project timeline, I think we're proposing to get all the field work done for you in about 5 weeks, report writing a similar amount of time, and then about a month of addressing back and forth with comments and getting everything into a database with you. So We've got, I think, a pretty, did everybody get one? Or who needs one? So this is a draft timeline. Of course, we haven't gotten into negotiations with you on start dates and things, but this should give you an idea of how we roll through the phases of a project like this. So, Ken, do you want to spend a few minutes just talking specifically
Yeah.
about the steps in the process?
Okay, so on the project approach, we typically start off with a kickoff meeting with the appropriate folks that we're dealing with. Gathering data review, obviously doing a pilot study. We want to do a pilot study, and that would probably be whatever building you would like us to look at as a pilot study, so that we can do that particular pilot study and then get your comments and before we proceed with the rest of the facilities.
You got the pilot study, and then,
Yeah. Project approach. We're gonna, we reviewed existing data. We start off and do our field assessments, gather all the information, and then we take it back to our office and put it into a narrative report and enter all the data into our database with all the costs and everything. And group the projects and do the final cost estimating, and then submit a preliminary draft for your comments at that point.
so really, two pieces there. I turned mine off while it wasn't my turn. Okay, back on. Okay, so really two pieces. We want to deliver a report for every building. And Ken, do you want to get the sample report going around? So for each building, we're going to deliver a comprehensive report that has a narrative that supports what we saw, photos of every deficiency, and cost estimates for those repairs. Once we're done submitting those reports and we've got your feedback, then we start to pull that all into a comprehensive plan. That's when the ranking and prioritization, grouping of projects together, that's when that happens. So cost estimating, a lot of clients want to talk about cost estimating in greater detail, so we can do that at the end if you'd like. Anybody here familiar with Whitestone Research? Anybody heard of RS Means? Really, this is the first crowd that facilities folks at. RS Means is, if you go into an architect's office, they've got, it's like the encyclopedia of cost estimating. They've got the books, depending how old school the architect is, they actually still have the books on their shelf. Everybody else uses it online right now. Whitestone is a similar type of service. Our cost estimating platform is built on Whitestone. We think it's easier to use than the RS Means platform. So when we do our cost estimating, it's going to be based on the uniformat system of breaking a building down into its component parts. Anybody familiar with uniformat? So uniformat is just a standard way of breaking a building into its component parts. If you see here on the on the screen here where the arrow is, it's it's subdivision A is structure, shell, interiors, equipment. You get the idea. So when our guys go through a building, there's a systematic way that we're breaking the building into its component parts. Why is that important to you? If we're doing cost estimating consistently across buildings, we want everybody calling those components the same thing. And then when you're looking 2 years down the road to do a cost estimate on a 3-ply built-up roof, that's exactly coded into the system, and you can look that up, what today's current cost is on that. So we're helping you build the database. And by the way, this is the way that the AIA currently recommends a building spec be done. So that's how we do it. Below the line there is soft costs. So when we do our cost estimating, we're not only doing labor and materials cost estimates, but we're including what we call soft costs. That's design, general contractor. We can talk to you about how we do that within our system if anybody's interested. So, and it's, I'm judging from the room that nobody wants to go through a detailed example, so I'm going to skip through this one. All right, so this is the first page of your report, the thick one that you get. This is going to be one of the first things you look at. This is the immediate repairs table. It's going to talk to you about what the component is. Has everybody got that in their handout? Should be about halfway through. It's got the quantity, the unit cost, and total. So this is the key takeaway when the inspector looked at the building. These are the items that we think need to be repaired right away, and why. And there'll be a detailed explanation in the study of why we're recommending these repairs. Usually they're code compliance or life safety issues.
And also ADA too, typically.
Right, we'd put ADA as a code. The next page is a 12-year table, same idea. It's got the building components down the left side. It's got the costs to repair each of those components in the column representing the year in which they need to be repaired. One of you is going to ask me at the end of this how we figure in inflation. That's what's happening below the line there. We like to show in the field of the table here where these numbers are. These are all estimated in today's dollars. Below the line is where we put the factor for inflation and come up with projected inflated totals. That's the standard for doing that, and it's by far easier for everybody to eyeball that and understand where the numbers came from that way. So this is a little example of what the report is going to look like in a single page. That's a snapshot of the HVAC discussion. And we're proposing, as part of that deliverable, in addition to those bound reports that you see, we're going to give you a database. We call that database Asset Calc. What it's going to do is allow you to instead of laying all those building reports across the boardroom table and trying to decide what the top priorities are, this is going to let you do it in a table. If you've ever worked with Excel, after you get a couple tabs, it gets hard to compare things. This is in a SQL database, so it allows you to say, okay, where's my first million need to go? What roof projects need to happen next summer? Run those kind of queries. This is what a single building dashboard looks like. It's got a chart of where the repairs need to happen. This is called a facility condition index chart. Has anybody used the phrase facility condition index? Okay, so I think it was in your RFP too, so it'd be cheating if they didn't use it. But it's the ratio of required repairs to replacement cost of the building. So you can see this building as time goes along, left to right. If without funding, the condition index for that building gets higher and higher. So that's a very graphic way of showing the board, here's what's happening at current funding levels to this building, and likewise, we can prepare a graph that says, here's what it's going to take to keep these buildings from getting any worse. This is funding required to keep this FCI line flat across that curve. This is a little observations table like you would see in the database. Single entry. We have photos associated with every one of the components so that anybody who's looking at this at a later date can see what it was we were looking at and why we were recommending a repair to this particular unit or this particular section of the roof or what have you. All right, so that's the facility condition assessment piece. The ADA piece, we don't need to go into as much detail because I think we've set the tone. But in your RFP, you did talk about ADA being a driver. This is what a third-party certification report looks like. And we've got a copy of that going around the table. So up on top is a section describing exactly what the non-compliant item was. This is regarding slope and cross slope. So here's a before picture of the landing and what needed to be fixed. And then for everybody who's concerned, here's a little picture that shows, yes, this was taken care of, and this is what that railing and the ramp looked like after the county took care of it. And this is what gets sent back to DOJ, documenting that repair's complete. Now, this is all in the database as well. So you all can prepare these reports. You all can take the pictures after the work's done. You all can submit it to DOJ, or we can do that with you. This is a picture of what a single ADA checklist looks like. As part of the ADA scope, you didn't talk much about getting public input in. A lot of times when we do these projects, there is a public input phase, specifically where we're looking for programs that happen at various sites that are going to require additional public access. So we can facilitate those with the county, or we can show you some survey methods that other counties have done to reach out to the residents and different interest groups to make sure that all the programs are being addressed. Similar to what we've done in Asset Calc, we call it ADA Calc. It's the same database, but what we've done, have you all heard the term transition plan associated with the ADA? Okay, so the transition plan is your plan of how you're going to get to a compliant mode and how long it's going to take you to get there. This database application will be your transition plan. And DOJ's accepted that. The printouts that come out of it are accepted. But this is how you compile, here's what we're going to do in what order we're going to do it, and here's how you document, here's what's been complete, and we are on plan, or in some cases, after 1 year, you may be ahead of plan, you may be behind plan and have to tell DOJ what's going on. This is going to allow you to do that pretty easily. So inside the database, we've got a place where the inspectors are inputting the data. One neat thing that we've got here is we've got chapter and verse of the regulation also coded in here. So if we're saying we've got a curb ramp that needs to be put in place, we'll include the exact citation out of the regulation that talks about parking, curb ramps, and what the actual required slope is, so that when a contractor comes in, they understand exactly what the requirement is. And this is what the work complete report is. We capture what the cost was as well. So you'll have that in the database. Another copy of the survey screen. One thing that we think is pretty cool in the Asset Calc database is, a lot of the ADA issues that we've got are parking and paving related, sidewalk related, and a lot of them happen at parks. It's hard to tell your technicians or your contractors where exactly those items are, just using words. So in the database, we've interfaced with Google Maps. When you open up this page, the Google satellite map will open up, and it'll have an arrow pointing exactly to the parking spot we're talking about, zoomed in. And then you've got below that, an on-the-ground shot of what that van accessible parking spot was, and a description of what it's supposed to have. So kind of a neat feature that our technical guys added to the database, but one that a lot of our county government clients, especially Parks and Recs clients, are saying is very useful to them when they're trying to direct folks to where the fix is. Another view of the same kind of thing. So that's it for the main scope of work. This is kind of our next to last slide. You asked us about value-added services, things we do. Energy audits are the first one that comes to mind. A lot of clients that are similar to you have had us do energy audits at the time that we're out doing building inspections. It makes some amount of sense that when you've got the mechanical engineers out looking at things like boilers and HVAC systems and recommending when the next replacement needs to happen, that we're also talking to you about what a more efficient replacement would look like, what the cost difference would be, and is that a good idea based on the extra cost versus the utility savings. So that's what an energy audit would do for you, and we've got the folks that can do that. Environmental, we've got in-house environmental folks. You probably have already identified your lead-based paint, asbestos, mold, or what other issues. So where these would be a value add is really in the cost estimating of looking at any, say if you had asbestos-containing floor tiles that were going to be impacted during a renovation. We've got in-house environmental estimators that could help you look at the cost of that included in the project. And So specialty engineers, like, if it hasn't become clear yet, we're using all EMG folks on this. We are not using multiple subcontractors. These are all in-house staff. So we currently have 500 inspectors in the field. Most of them are architects, engineers. We've got seismic engineers as well. We keep those guys on the West Coast generally. We do also have electrical engineers, certified energy managers, many other specialty disciplines, ex-code inspectors. So that's the kind of folks that we've got in the field doing this kind of work. So this is the last slide. So I think the key takeaway, hopefully in the quick half hour, we've given you a couple examples of where we've done similar projects before. Hopefully they match up with what you see your project looking like. As far as my read on the scope of work, this is an exact fit for what we do. We're unique amongst some of the other firms you may be talking to in that this is what we do. It's condition assessments, long-range plans. We're not designers or construction managers, so we're focused on doing a great job on this project for you, and we think we'd be a great fit. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Are there some questions?
I kept it exactly to a half hour, too, just to,
Who would you use as your third-party certifier for your ADA in Illinois?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, they'd be EMG employees. So it'd be the same folks that we're using on Cook County Housing Authority. So Ken is one of them. Who else did we have on that project doing the certification? Larry. So Larry Hamrick, whose resume was in there, and well, so the and Jill Orloff.
Jill Orloff is another architect, and she does ADA too.
Yep.
So they're all EMG employees, so, and they are local, so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Jeff, please.
My apologies for the naive questions I'm about to ask, but I just learned about Asset Calc about 17 minutes ago, so did some brief research. When it comes to data governance and data ownership of data inside Asset Calc, who owns the data? Would it be EMG or would it be Champaign County?
Yeah,
We'll start with that.
it's your data. So we've got no ownership of the data. It's so the way we sell Asset Calc, we sell it as a deliverable. We're not selling it as a software as a service or anything like that. So it's a SQL database. That's your data. At any time that you want us to deliver those SQL tables to you on a disk with all your data in it, that's what we do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so it does answer the question, which leads me to the next question. It doesn't sound like then that's a cloud-based service. It's something we'd have to house on-prem here, the data repository for all this information, or is it something that you guys house on your end?
Yeah, we house it on our end. So it's actually on our servers. We've got off-site servers. We use a third-party service. So that's where the servers that run the SQL, the Asset Calc SQL servers are. So now 95% of our clients run that. They're accessing it through the web. We do have one or two clients that decided to go ahead and put that on their own servers. But the downside of putting a software on your server is that any improvements or updates that we make to it don't come across to your server.
Which leads me to the next and final question. In terms of access to the software, assuming we go with you, how long do we have to access that software, and is there any sort of associated fee that would be required longer term as we continue to use the product?
Yeah, good question. So we see this as the deliverable. There's other firms that we compete with that have packages they sell by the head, license fees. That's not what we're interested in. So the only fee associated with Asset Calc after the first year is a $5,000 a year hosting fee. There's no per user fee. It's unlimited users. anybody who wants to use it. At any time you want to take the SQL tables and put them on your server, then we deliver them to you. So that 5,000 just covers the hosting.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on Jeff's questioning, then the ease of updating, is it fairly easy for staff to keep this up to date?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So this kind of package, I don't know how often you're running your capital budget and presenting it up to the committee for review. I imagine it's not every day, and you don't want to be in the database every day. Most of our clients are only getting in this database every couple months. We've got a few clients that actually ask us to come in quarterly, and they give us a stack of, here's the projects we completed last quarter. Can you update these into the database? The only thing that's required to update those in the database is, okay, building 1, we put a new roof on that building. Okay, was it the same kind of roofing that was there before? What did you pay for it? And does it also have a 20-year warranty? So it's 3 fields that get associated with that roof. It's been replaced. Now it has 20 more years of life left on it because it was replaced. That's the kind of updating that's happening in the database. The other kind of updating that happens in the database is clients that have their own inspectors. Do you have a question? Was that unclear? Sorry. I'm sorry. The other kind of updating is folks that are sending their in-house staff out to do periodic re-inspections. So usually one of the questions that I get during this part, so I'll go ahead and ask it since no one has yet, is what do you recommend as far as re-inspections? The standard for what we see is 5-year cycle folks are doing re-inspections. I talked to you about that BIA contract. They have us on a 3-year cycle. Chicago Schools has us on a 2-year cycles. Every 5 years for this kind of inspection or having some third party come out is probably good practice. But do you have in-house maintenance staff, Dana? Okay, so having your folks go out annually and do condition assessments of the big items or the items that are scheduled to be replaced within the 5-year window of the plan would be recommended. This kind of database would allow your folks to have a place where they went out and inspected that item to say, when the EMG inspectors were out there, this component was in good shape. The roof wasn't leaking, but now we've got some areas with leaks, and we need to move that into a higher priority category. So that's the other kind of updating that's done is in-house staff is updating condition after we leave, usually, year after and annually thereafter.
Patsy, please.
Thank you. You talk about the largeness of your staff. I'm interested in the numbers who actually are here in Illinois, and you're in Maryland, and we're here in Illinois. How do you handle those kind of jobs? You've had some in Ohio and
Yeah, sure.
other states.
So that's a fair question. So so 2 things. Our corporate headquarters is in Maryland, so that's why I'm from Maryland. Ken's in Chicago, and I talked to you about a couple of big projects we've got in Chicago that are staffed with Illinois-based folks. So we've got 15 engineers on the Chicago schools. I don't know if I told you the story about Chicago Housing Authority or not. Chicago Housing Authority currently has us looking at 100% of their portfolio. And when I say 100%, they have us looking at every single unit of their portfolio. So we're getting into every apartment in the portfolio of Chicago Housing Authority. Ken, how many is that?
18,000.
18,000 apartments. And we're putting a database together for them so they know exactly what's going on, what the age of the appliances, all that. That's another dozen folks on that project. That project will be over here in another 2 months, and that's the staff that I would use on this project. But to be fair, because we're not a design firm and we don't have a building here that has guys in it that are making drawings of buildings, what we do is we want our guys spending about half of their time looking at clients' buildings and then coming back and preparing these kind of reports and cost estimates. So that's the way our model works, whether we're looking at an acquisition that Marriott's doing, part of our company has a contract with Home Depot, where we help them plan renovations and then how to roll them across 400 properties. That's the kind of project that we do. So we see this project being about 5-6 weeks in the field for the initial study phase. So that's how we would staff the project.
Diane?
As I'm listening, and I think I heard this, but I'm not sure, we can also update. If we put the new roof on, the 3 little entries, we can make those entries. That's not something that you have to do.
Oh.
We don't have to give you a stack of paper. We can do it ourselves.
That's the whole idea, absolutely. So this is a tool,
Yeah.
a leave behind that we think is much more useful than a stack of 3-ring binders or a big Excel workbook with a bunch of tabs in it. So yes. Now, we do have a couple clients that find it easier to call us up and say, can you come down and sit with the admin in the capital projects division and update all the projects that were completed last quarter. So we're happy to do it either way.
Gary,
Jeff?
can I finish up here?
Oh.
And then the fees are adjusted accordingly based on how much we use your time versus us doing part of that? Because I know you said there was a $5,000 annual fee for just holding stuff, but then I'm sure there's user fees too.
So the $5,000 is the only fee associated with the database.
No matter
It's the hosting fee. Now, if you want us to come out and sit down with you for a day and look through invoices, we'll ask for a few dollars to do that.
But basically, we can do those things after it's done.
It's really designed
All
for you
right.
to do that yourselves, absolutely.
Jeff?
Diane brought up a good point, and you mentioned something about binders, which are physical objects and so forth. In terms of having asset calc, if the system goes down, whatnot, we lose the binder, if you will. So what sort of disaster recovery do you have in place to ensure that if something were to happen to the data center, we would still have access to our documents?
Yeah, fair question. So so 2 things. We are going to deliver to you a binder. And the reason that we do is because when you've got a group like this or Dana's facilities group, folks want to review a written report and give us their feedback on, what do we find wrong with this building and what's our recommended approach. So there will be a PDF deliverable that is delivered to you. It's printed out in paper, and then we all talk about. Once that's done, then all the key findings, component by component, what the year of replacement, what the cost is, all that kind of stuff goes into the database. Also in Asset Calc, if you pull up that building, there'll be a copy of the PDF. If anybody wants to pull up the full PDF of the pretty report with assembled photos and systems, they can print that off. As you know, you can do out of a SQL system. You can attach photos and documents. If you want us to save roof warranties in there, we can do that as well. So that answers number 1 of your question. The service that we use is a third-party backup service for all of our servers. I could give you their disaster recovery plan, but they've got daily backups to all the databases and all that kind of stuff. So we feel like it's pretty secure.
Other questions? Okay. Mr. Shore?
Thank you. First, I wanted to touch on a discrepancy here between the response to the RFQ and the handout you gave us. Initially, the timetable had you finishing up on August 5th in the initial response, which stuck out to me because it was a little earlier than some of the other ones. And
yeah, all joking aside, I think if you look at the start date on the first one, it's already passed. So the one I printed out takes into account what today is and when we would likely start. So I figured somebody was gonna. I should have pointed that out when I handed him out. So I'm sorry about that.
All right, thank you. And secondly, I noticed there's a difference in the way that you organize the leadership of your project, whereas the firm we just heard from has a leadership team in which county officials are included, whereas this seems to be a little bit more you at the top and then people underneath. Can you talk about the differences in those styles?
So I can't comment on the other teams, other than you told us what their names were, and they appear to be local design firms. So like I don't think you're looking for a pre-design kind of engagement here that requires everybody to talk about what the intended program for the building is, although that is part of it. But I think what your RFP asked for was a capital plan that looked at immediate requirements, 5-year requirements, 10-year requirements. We can lay on top of that program requirements, system obsolescence, that type of thing. So for us, the interface with the county happens right here with Ken, and there was one person in our org chart, Ed Beagley, who couldn't make it here tonight, but he'll be having that with there. We don't, so to be fair, we didn't get into much detail about what happens as far as the interview with building staff at each building. There is a sit-down with the facility staff at each building. What we're really looking to get out of that interview is more about what's currently going on with the building, what are the repairs that are needing to happen, rather than what's your vision for this building 5 years down the road. Although we've done that, that wasn't my sense that was what you all were looking for in this engagement. So did I miss the target on that, or am I allowed to ask? Okay, thank you.
I believe the time is about up for questions. I do have one question which you sort of touched on, but I'm not sure you answered it for me. Do you have a Illinois PE on staff that can handle our parking lot issues? Although there are not many of them, we will need something like that. Do you have that, or how did you propose to provide that kind of expertise?
Yeah, we've got Illinois licensed staff for that.
That can handle parking lots?
Civil engineer for parking and paving.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, that concludes the second presentation. Again, we thank you very much for your effort, and
We
have a safe
appreciate
drive
it.
home.
Thanks for the opportunity.
appreciate it. Thank you.
What are next steps for here? What's the timeline for?
Our plan is that by this evening, we'll have the ranking done,
Okay.
and the committee will then ask the administrative staff to go ahead and proceed with a attempt to go into contract negotiations with the top scoring firm. Illinois law requires that we take the top scoring firm and try to come to some sort of a monetary agreement. And then we have to proceed on down through until we do come up with a firm that we believe we can enter into an arrangement that does meet our monetary needs, as well as provides us with the kind of skill that we need. So by this evening, I think we'll know who's going to at least be asked to start contract negotiations with our administration.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is at 8, so if anybody wants to take a break, just stand around and visit, or raid the, yeah, we're not. Or raid the snack goodies. Thank you. Well, I think we'll go back into session. We're ready for our third presentation for this evening. And the presentation is by Bailey Edwards. And forgive me, I'm not sure I know who to introduce. But
I'm Robin Whitehurst. I'll be the principal in charge for Bailey Edward.
Thank you, Robin. So please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for having us this evening and giving us this opportunity to present our team and our qualifications to you. As mentioned, we're with Bailey Edward. Bailey Edward is an architecture, engineering, and construction management firm. We've been around for about 23 years. Ellen Dixon and I started the company. We're a women-owned business in the state of Illinois. All of our CMS certifications are up to date. We've had a Champaign location since about the year 2000. We teamed up with Ellen's former mentor, Ken Nelson, he was a partner of Unteed Skaggs Nelson. So there's a long reputation and of service to the community in Champaign and Urbana for many years at that location. So a little bit of background about our company, but we focus on institutions that serve, support, and protect the public, almost exclusively. That's who we work for. So higher ed, government's about 40% of our client base currently. And I will be the principal in charge for this project. I'm also the technical principal for our firm and oversee historic preservation work, restoration work, and renovations.
My name is Carla Smalley. I am with Bailey Edward. I'll be the project manager for this project. I grew up in Champaign. In fact, I'm the 5th generation Smalley in this area. I went to school at the University of Oklahoma, and I have had a cumulative of about 19 years with architectural firms. Some of my notable projects that I've worked on here in this area are, excuse me, the Unit 4 school additions and renovations, and multiple projects over at the University of Illinois, including the Lincoln Hall renovation, the Natural History Building assessment, and assessment studies for Turner Hall, and we're getting ready to do one for the Illini Union.
Good evening, I'm Todd Higginbotham, and I am also with Bailey Edward, and I will be the ADA inspector and project architect on this project. I bring 28 years to the team, primarily in the Springfield area with several ADA upgrades and renovations, and recently doing a lot of renovation projects for the GSA in Central Illinois and in Indiana.
My name is Pete Larson. I'm an architect also with Bailey Edward. I've been with them for about 4 years now. My relevant project experience, I was project architect for the Champaign Unit 4 elementary school renovation addition projects, and then most recently finished up a facility assessment for Illinois Wesleyan University, and that was the full campus, over 50 buildings for that.
We also have a couple of team members that weren't able to join us tonight, identified in our materials to you. Rochelle Freegard, she comes to us from Seattle a couple years ago. Senior level architect, used to run her own firm in that area, and they did public work, private work, anything from $100 million housing complexes on down. So she's got extensive experience. Then Kevin Schnebley, he's our branch manager at the Champaign location. He's actually a construction manager by training. We really value having that other set of eyes come out with us from a contractor standpoint and basis when we do building assessments. And he actually, that's why he can't join us tonight. He's down in Collinsville looking at a low-income senior housing project. So that's Bailey Edward. But we've also assembled a team of 2 other sub-consulting firms, Henneman Engineering.
Good evening. I'm Paul Boland with Henneman Engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer. I also lead our Henneman Engineering office here in Champaign. Henneman Engineering, as I said, is headquartered in Champaign, but we're a big firm. We've got about 85 engineers in offices throughout the Midwest. What that means to you is we've got a lot of experts. I've got a chiller expert. If you need an expert on Siemens or JCI control, I've got them. So we've got a big, deep team, but with local care and concern for your project. I also have 8 years' experience as a mechanical engineer in manufacturing and machine design engineer. I think that's important in this pursuit because we have very extensive experience in analyzing machinery, looking at rates of failure, things of that nature, and doing predictive maintenance, which is a tool we offer that we'll want to discuss tonight. My team is John Fleming, senior mechanical engineer, 24 years experience. Al Hagan, electrical engineer, 40 years experience. Jim Bright, very highly skilled electrical engineer, and Nathan Alderman will be assisting us with a lot of data entry into our maintenance facilities assessment software. Scott?
Good evening. I'm Scott Morrison. I'm a senior structural engineer with Henneman Engineering. Don't let that title fool you. I'm going to be the one that's on the field, working to do the evaluations and do the work in the facilities here. I have over 30 years' experience in consulting. I have an undergrad in architecture, master's in civil engineering, both at Illinois. Have done a lot of projects in the last 24 years in Champaign-Urbana, including U of I locker room addition at the Memorial Stadium, some Unit 4 schools, Barksdale and Stratton with Bailey Edward, as well as providing construction engineering for your bell tower. When that was being built, I worked with the contractor and helped provide shoring, underpinning, and making sure that the contractor's work was performed safely and stabilize your building. So I understand your old buildings, I understand the new buildings, and that will come into play as we evaluate your facilities.
So we've also added Burns Clancy. We also added Burns Clancy for civil engineering.
Good evening, I'm Chris Billing. I'll be the project manager. Burns Clancy and Associates is a small consulting civil engineering firm. We've been in Urbana here for 40 years now, and for approaching 35 years, we've probably been doing work on for the county on this campus and some of the other county buildings. Tom Burns and Ed Clancy as principals, they'll be lending their many years of expertise and knowledge and history and that institutional knowledge that'll be important throughout. We'll pull in other engineers as well when specialties require, such as Don Wathier with for stormwater management, maybe Roger Meyer for utilities and all. I'll primarily be working on the underground or the surface, pavements, access, those types of aspects. But again, our track record, there's probably very few facilities of the counties that we haven't touched at one point or other from in some aspect over the years.
Hi, I'm Bill Williams with Reliable Environmental. I'll be handling the environmental aspects of the project. I've been in the environmental field for over 29 years. We have developed thousands of management plans for schools as well as state buildings. Currently, we're working with University of Illinois and Champaign Unit 4 School District. Bill Fitch is a professional engineer and serves as our environmental designer. He's been in the field or been in this business for over 30 years.
So that's our team. You can see we've got a lot of experts on this team, so we have to manage them and manage them effectively, and Carla's going to talk about that.
Hi, so as your PM, your project manager, all communication will go through me. I will be in charge of maintaining the schedule and the budget when it comes to that, and putting the right people on your projects. As you can see, we have assembled a fabulous multidisciplinary team to work on all your projects, and we are ready to address most of those issues that you have identified on your facilities. On the screen here, you can see we've separated our paperwork team and our technical team. That way everyone can focus on what they do best. So our paperwork team is doing invoicing and contracts. Our technical team is out in the field. They're doing, excuse me, the forensic work and the conditions assessment. So everyone gets to focus on their strengths. We've also turned in a schedule with our submittal showing that we have the qualified people ready to work and complete your study.
Great. So in looking at the RFP, we've identified up on the slide here where it says Champaign County's needs. These are really the services that you've requested that a team deliver to you. But I also want to point out the long list of services on the right in that green band. It's all the services that we can perform. So this team's very, like I said, a team of experts and very used to delivering all different types of architecture and engineering services for our clients and consulting services. But specifically, we're going to focus tonight on the facility condition assessments and capital planning that are really the core of what you're looking for, along with the consulting for ADA compliance issues and the Department of Justice issues that you're having currently. But overall, everything that we do when we make recommendations, we're always interested in energy efficiency for you. And really that comes down to being good stewards of your resources. It's not necessarily about feel good for green, although we can do that. It's really about being efficient, and we know that your dollars are decreasing and you have to be efficient in everything you do. So if we see opportunities for improvement that way as we go through the condition assessment, we'll make recommendations to your facilities folks. So this next section here, we wanted to just kind of feed back to you what we heard and saw when we were doing the walkthrough, which was you guys you so graciously hosted for us, so we could get a better idea of what we'd be assessing.
We all know this building, it's really a jewel. It exhibits the renovations that you've done. It exhibits the maintenance team and how they're maintaining things, but it also illustrates how the maintenance team has to fight fires and sometimes can't address the things, the long-term things that they need to do. And of course, the Department of Justice also identified some ADA issues there as well.
Here in Brookings, what stuck out to me when we walked the facilities, this is definitely a building in need of some love. The exterior envelope needs some work. The roof has had seen better days, but it's in addition, the HVAC controls are an issue after there's been a lot of renovations and walls are put in certain places. The HVAC zoning hasn't been kept up to that.
I think one thing, when we look at a building like this, we know that this was built as a middle school back in the mid-'70s. As the HVAC equipment reaches the end of its expected life, this would probably be a good candidate for at least an evaluation of converting this to a ground source geothermal system for several different reasons. One is the potential energy savings. Number two is it gives us the ability to do a lot of different zoning. We realize there's a lot of different offices here that have different use patterns, and it might be a good fit. One thing that we're very highly regarded for is we don't just give you one assumed solution and move forward with it. We do a full life cycle cost analysis on any recommendation we present. What that means for you is we'll come to you with 2 or 3 options, and we'll look at the 25-year cost of operating those systems. That's the first-time capital cost to build it, your continuing energy cost, which is very significant, and then the maintenance cost of it. We'll roll those numbers back into 2015 dollars so you can accept or you can recommend the option with the least life cycle cost.
And at the nursing home, I'm sure we're all aware of the history of this building and its the problems that it's had over the years. One thing I'd like to point out that we've noticed from past projects is that a building like this might still score well in a facility assessment, even though there's some significant deficiencies. There are a lot of other components that are new from new construction. So things like the new floor and ceiling and walls and doors and windows will tend to keep the score in a facility assessment report high for a building, even though there's significant issues.
And we did some follow-up forensic investigations after construction too. So from the site civil work outside perspective, we have a pretty good handle on what the infrastructure is there and some of the problems that need some addressing.
This building, the old civil defense building, seems to be suiting to its new use well. It's been renovated along the way to serve its new use and seems to be still in fairly good condition.
I'm going to kind of skip ahead here a little bit. We did go through and tour all the buildings and have some observations, but basically what we saw was a series of problems in buildings of ages that we're all familiar with working in. You have some particular situations that are unique, but we've seen sort of isolated instances of all these types of issues in other facilities and with other clients. Pete mentioned the IWU condition assessment. That was over 50 buildings. Some of them were residential. Some were, classroom buildings, et cetera. So a wide range of buildings that we took a look at. And we put together a facilities condition assessment, pretty much what you're looking for. But we also, and this whole team is expert at, and we get called in by our clients to come in and identify problems and then get them fixed. So, and we do that, a lot of what we have done is through IDIQs, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or retainer projects with our clients. So a lot of those projects are really the outcome of a facility conditions assessment. My point for telling you all that is that we sort of know how to fix the problems that are going to be turned up. So we know what the solutions are. We can be very accurate about the dollars. Remember, this is a model, and that some of this modeling that Pete just talked about, when you put in a fairly new facility like the nursing facility, it may not score as poorly as maybe it should, but we'll be able to identify those components and subcomponents and put real dollars to them, because this team is all used to doing that kind of work. And just to point out, just right on Vine here in Urbana, this is the federal courthouse building that we did as part of our contract. We did a retro commissioning. So everything that we did there, and look at the problems, fix my building, do it in a way that's energy efficient. And we identified 20% energy savings. And this was a building that was built in the 90s. So sometimes those are the buildings that are the most demanding.
As you know, the Department of Justice randomly selected Champaign County to do an audit and identified several items. Part of our charge is to work with you, perhaps confirm some of those things, help identify solutions, help to communicate with the Department of Justice, and to help come up with solutions as well.
Our engineering team just finished a big project in Springfield, Illinois. It was for a renovation of the state capitol building. Part of that was driven by the U.S. Department of Justice that came in and did a similar type audit that wanted all of these ADA deficiencies corrected. So that was a main goal of our project, which we accomplished. We have very good relationships with DOJ, and we know how to work with them effectively as your advocate.
So this next part of the section, we're going to kind of talk about our methodology that we would apply to the county buildings here. This is a long list of steps that we would take. Most importantly, first of all, we'll start with reviewing your existing documentation, and we also understand that there's some studies that have been done on a couple of the facilities, and we'll be looking at those to make sure that the data points collected there will relate to the data that we want to collect for the other facilities, because we'll want them all to blend into this database. Then we'll go out and do site surveys, and our team will talk about that in a second. But part of what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to capture some of this existing documentation into the tool before we go out in the field. And then we'll use the tool out in the field to populate or to add our data to. So it'll be very, it'll speed things up, and it helps the people that are out in the field really know what they're looking at. Any images that we capture, we can index tag them to the database. Of course, then we'll be developing estimates on condition, looking at life expectancy, predictive maintenance planning. Paul's going to talk about it in a minute, because we think that's very important for what facilities has been telling us. And then looking at capital renewal requirements. And sort of this back half is what do you do with that data, and how do you leverage that data for your use to develop plans and budgets as you move forward. So first of all, we'll start off with site surveys, and we're very hands-on. That's Bailey Edwards staff and up in baskets. Not quite that's a more detailed level than we'll do for the facility conditions assessment. But just to let you know, that's the kind of work that we do on a regular basis to solve problems with buildings.
And from a site perspective, we would basically start with the reconnaissance survey. It's mostly a visual survey. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of testing on if that's necessary. Particularly regarding the ADA, we do have to be very meticulous in measuring precisely what the situation is when we're reviewing that. So there's some of our staff that very typical of what we have to do on projects where you start out with an existing condition and not a new construction project.
The environmental process, we would review existing. Oh, no problem. The environmental process, we would want to make sure that we review the existing environmental reports for each facility, and then, of course, do a walk through the facilities and identify any existing hazards. And then a big part of this, of course, is to evaluate how the hazardous materials will be affected by the recommendations made in the assessment, and then, of course, the cost estimates associated with that. And, you know, the big focus we want to make sure is that we've included this. Too many times we run into projects where they haven't addressed the hazard assessment issues, and then you get a big change order, a big cost bump, and that people weren't expecting.
So now we have all this data that we've accumulated, And the key part to the success of any facilities assessment is the tool we give you to make informed budgetary and management decisions on what you're going to do with your building. How can you use our outcome as a predictive tool to plan effectively for your budget and your future capital expenditures? So what we've developed is our own database, and this is open source code. It's a Microsoft Excel. There's no special training. We've used this extensively for large healthcare campuses, for governmental clients. And basically, we go in and look at each building. Each building has a database associated with it where we memorialize photographs, condition assessment, estimated cost to repair, expected lifetime of a new equipment, remaining useful life of equipment. We look at all these systems, all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, building envelope, roofs, windows, everything that has future maintenance dollars attached to it on your buildings. To get a little bit into the nuts and bolts of it, what we'll do, I've given an example. This was a healthcare client we did up in Wisconsin that had a 15-building campus. Here I'm looking at some boilers as an example, but we'd fill out a similar spreadsheet on this for the roofs, the glazing, the exterior masonry. And what we use this for, part of your RFP asks for more definitive information on every piece of equipment. You want the tag data off everything. So there's a spot for that on this database. We put all of that in. The key thing to it is we need to identify what buildings are mission critical. And this comes, we do a lot of work for industrial clients, Kraft, Caterpillar, ADM, Tate & Lyle. But you have mission critical buildings also. They're this building for county leadership. They're the juvenile detention, the jail, the nursing home. Those buildings all have to have heat, power, and air conditioning year-round. So we identify critical pieces of equipment and what possible failure modes they have. We put that in here, and then this rolls into a database you can use to predict 1-year cost, 5-year cost, by building, by criticality, and we'll go into some of the results on that in just a second.
And as Paul had mentioned, there's an enormous amount of data that comes through in this type of report. So the trick is finding ways to express the essence of the data and the key findings in a clear and concise way. This is just an example layout that we've used for a previous client. And this is, we'll do it by building, and the next slide. And then we'll do...
Yeah, just to point out, so each building will have its own report that'll have the detail level, but it'll have a cover sheet that gives you all the vital statistics and the score for it.
Mm-hmm. And then also for the full all assessed facilities, we'll combine all that information into an overall clear, easy to understand summary sheet.
Your RFP asked about value-added services, and one that we do that comes from our experience in industry is predictive maintenance. And right now, a lot of what we do as Champaign County is maintenance once we have a breakdown. And that's one way of doing things, but what it leads to is it certainly can maximize the life of the equipment, but it leads to some budgetary surprises here for the county board when Dana may bring to you a repair bill that's unanticipated. So what we're trying to do with this tool is to move from breakdown maintenance to more preventative maintenance, and that's sometimes as simple as going back through all the owner manuals and making certain we're doing the lubrication every 50 hours on air handler bearings. We're changing gear case oil, things that are very simple, but they're often overlooked with as many facilities and different systems as you have. Then we can move back to predictive maintenance, and that means we might look at vibration on bearings. We'd only do this on very critical systems, chillers, boilers, things that could affect where a breakdown is going to cause a big upset for you as a county board.
So the areas of concentrated effort, this slide is really just capturing a lot of the data that you had in your RFP and where you wanted the team to pay particular attention. Obviously ADA compliance, sensitivity to existing architectural fabric, specifically with the county courthouse building, and really understanding which of your buildings are mission critical and systems and criticality of the various components that would lead to ensuring that facility stays operating. But we also know that a lot of the buildings have pneumatics in them from a control standpoint, and while those become more capital projects, it really affects all this evolving technology that's out there and your ability to manage these facilities. So we want to take a look at that carefully when we're doing the assessment and put in dollars for that, because that really becomes long-term planning dollars. And then finally, You asked us about presentation and how we would present the material. And Pete alluded to, there's a lot of different data that comes out. We'll want to work with your facility staff to really understand and break this data out and put it into charts and graphs that are easily understood by everyone. What's important? What's the important information to get out of this? And because we're not only conveying it to the board here, this is a public entity, and you know, what role do we need to make sure that we communicate clearly to the public to then understand what the board's facing to keep their facilities running and to keep servicing them, which is really your role in the community. So a few charts on there. So the one on the lower left is really the major building components like roofing, HVAC systems. You know, we would total all the buildings and we begin to understand where am I taking the big hit? Is it roofing systems? Is it HVAC? Where are those costs? And on the right, that lower disc chart is
It's by priority, so what percentage of our deficiencies need to be addressed immediately in the 1 year or versus 5 year or 10 year and beyond?
Yeah, you'd asked you'd given us sort of three priority classes, and so we would register all of our surveys to what you asked for. But then you also asked us about funding scenarios and to look at both individually buildings and then all the buildings given together. What does it look like if you don't evaluate, if you don't put any additional dollars into maintenance and into the capital renewal expenditures? What's going to happen? And you can see for this particular client that FCI, the Facility Condition Index, conditions to worsen, or it gets worse. So over time, so we can take a look at that. We'll have the data in, and we can print these charts out. You actually asked for 2 other funding scenarios as well, and these can all be printed out into charts and in a way that's legible, readable, and available for everyone. Finally, in the RFP, you talked about value-added services, what potentially we could, and we highlighted a few of those. But really, the digital laser scanning is one of those items that we thought might be of interest, just depending on what sort of the outcome projects would be. Again, this team is used to actually implementing these projects. And the lower left-hand is a digital laser scan of a very tight, compact space with a lot of mechanicals in it. And that sometimes, especially with existing buildings where there's not drawings available, when you need to make an enhancement or improvement or put in new systems, can be a great tool. And I think Paul has a couple things that...
And we're also Henneman's and Ameren Acton Energy Partner for our clients throughout the state. We've obtained as partner a lot of grants. I just got a very significant grant for boiler replacements at the Daly Center in downtown Chicago. So a lot of grant money is out there. We've got very deep relationships with Ameren and DCEO in Springfield to be considered favorably for some of these grants. Some are very simple. Some are just boiler tune-up and combustion analyses.
Yeah, and I think we also thought as we look at the buildings that we could probably identify some commissioning, retro-commissioning opportunities as well. I kind of mentioned that early on, that this idea of focusing on green and sustainable, and if we see low-hanging fruit, we're going to bring it up just as we see it, which is kind of how we did our other assessments. We'll work very closely with your facilities folks. So why us in a minute? We're local. We've got a team of experts that we can cover everything. And as Paul said, we're very deep with the engineering partners that we have, but we're also deep on the Bailey Edwards side. We have experts that have done your building types that you have and do them on a daily basis. And the various eras of buildings that are represented here on your campus, we've worked in all those buildings as well. Understanding your critical 24-hour infrastructure, again, we work with all public clients, and they have similar needs. When we did the Urbana Armory project out in Urbana for the DMAIL, that required a generator that could serve that entire facility. So we know how to incorporate infrastructure to do that. And finally, we're really good at managing. And the reason why that we're called responsive is because our clients called us that. And that's how we got that as a tagline. So we would be the same way with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now entertain questions. Any questions? Mr. Kibler.
Hi, guys. Thank you for coming out. So I have a couple questions. I think your experience and your expertise is has definitely shown itself through the presentation. My questions more pertain to what happens next after the fact, and mostly around the software and utilities that we'll be using after the fact to maintain our facilities. You had mentioned that you use an open source piece of software that works in Excel. Couple questions come to mind with that. Who technically of the three groups here owns the software? I know it's open source, but did you open source something and now you've commercialized it, or who owns that software? And the second piece to that is who owns the data? Once you've put it into your program, is it owned by you or is it owned by the county?
No,
If you can drive into that, it'd be great.
Hanneman Engineering developed that with our own engineers based upon previous clients that we've worked with. We've have also worked with purchase software programs, but we wanted something that was pure open source. And once you hire us to do this job, we would give you a copy of that, and then you would own both the software, the right to use it any way you want in the future, and absolutely any data or any rights associated with that, those belong to Champaign County.
With respect to open source licensing, what license is currently being employed? Because that also plays a big role if you're going to
We
give it
haven't
to
really,
us.
you asked if we've commercialized it. We've used it for other clients. We've given them the database and the Excel spreadsheets. So we haven't really done any licensing. The goal on this was to create better, more useful for the future facilities studies, not really to develop software. We're an engineering firm, so there really is no licensing, no future fees that you would have to use. If you need some level of training, we're right across town. We'd be happy to. But anybody that's familiar with Microsoft Excel and database can certainly use it.
But I think we're also interested in really working closely with your facilities staff and understanding, we understand that you're looking at net facilities for a management software tool. And I know that it's got an asset allocation or asset mapping as part of it. And what kind of data and fields are in that software that we can put into this tool because it's customizable? So that when we're out there doing the facilities condition assessment, we can grab that data. I think that OEM tag data probably comes out of that. And then how can you utilize that software then for repairs and ongoing planning? So we'd want to be talking with your facilities folks to see if we could, leverage that. If we're going to go out and extract this data in the field, we might as well, be thinking about the through use for your facilities staff.
Okay. And you mentioned the predictive maintenance side, and I was curious about that because it typically means some sort of Internet of Things / IoT measurement that we continually keep on the system. Am I thinking of the wrong thing with respect to predictive maintenance? If so, can you describe more of the predictive maintenance side? If not,
Sure.
Can you describe how you do it?
We do this for craft throughout the nation. It started here in Champaign. Now they've expanded this to plants. We're working on 3 plants throughout the nation right now. A lot of it is really pretty simple stuff. It's going back to the basics. Like I said, reviewing the operational manuals and making certain we have all of those original equipment, prescribed predictive maintenance tools in place. The next level for that is really to make physical measurements on equipment, bearing vibration, bearing temperatures, motor temperatures. Look back at previous history. If we've had a piece of equipment in for 20 years and we've had to replace 4 electric drives on it, we know that rather than wait for 5 years for a failure, we'd be better off to go ahead and stock another motor and replace it at 4.5 years so we don't have that downtime. So it's that level of thing with craft. We do use a proprietary software that I presume would be similar to what you've already purchased. But the point is that we've got a lot of experience using those different predictive maintenance tools to help you get to that level. For Champaign County, we're not talking about extruders or things that we do at ADM. We're going to be talking about bearings, gearboxes on fans, chiller compressors, some boiler burners. So there's about 5 things if we solve if we solve those 5 things, we can probably eliminate about 80% of your unexpected downtime on critical systems.
Other questions? Patsy?
Well, again, following up on Jeff's questions, and what is the ease of the staff here at the county to keep this updated as we go through and fix things and repair things or replace things?
Again, it's open software. It's, we will have an identification for each piece of equipment. And on my condition assessment, I noticed that air handler 6 over at the courthouse has, we've done 5 repairs on chilled water coils. We will note that at some point. We'll work with Danny so that it's past the point of economical repair. He'll go in at that point and update that, says new coil installed in August of 2015. So it's very simple. What we found on these with any client, whether it's manufacturing or a hospital or a governmental client, it's got to be easy and quick to use, or it will just gather dust on a shelf and is of no value once we leave.
Other questions? Diane?
Did I miss the timeline or something in here? I know you had a lot of things you talked about at the presentation, but I tried looking at it in the book that we had from earlier.
It's in there. It was probably a fold-out of 11
Okay.
by 17, so maybe it showed up as a blank page. Oh, is it there?
No.
Okay. It's a bar chart.
I must have missed it.
It's a bar graph.
I was like, okay, I don't have a pullout.
It gets us out to the November 3rd board meeting for the presentation to the board.
It may not have got printed out.
Oh, the little short one, okay. Sorry, I must have missed it.
Okay.
It was so easy to read.
Sorry, but
Thanks.
we wanted to get a certain level of detail and not, but I can see that I wouldn't be able to read it, I can tell you that, even with my cheaters, probably. Yeah, exactly.
Other questions? I'll have one. Tell us some more about your Champaign office. Location, again, how do we find it? What kind
We're
of
at
staff do you
1103
maintain?
South Mattis, right by Durst Cycle. So
Okay.
just north of there, and there's been an architecture firm in that location since 40 years. There's been an architecture firm there. And we're really the, Ken Nelson, when we acquired his location, he worked with us for another 12 years. So, and he's our landlord, and he's still a ad hoc consultant. If we see him doing the yard work, we bring him in and ask him some questions. So there's a long, I kind of jokingly say that, but Ken has a really great reputation in the community. Longtime architect, served Champaign Unit 4 school district for all those 40 years, and just a great legacy that we're trying to maintain. So, go ahead.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I think we'll conclude this presentation. Thank you again. We appreciate all the effort and expense you go to make this presentation for us. We deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Deb, I'd like to, do we need to talk a little bit about getting these reviews into you as soon as possible, or? As soon as you have those reviews completed, get them to Deb, and they will be tabulated, and we'll be able to make an announcement shortly. Again, those reference sheets, she would like to have those turned in as well. Well, thank you all for those that remained, and thank you for enough of the committee to stay so that we still have a quorum. We do have the tally now. I think you may have all seen it, but I'd like to announce the tally. The top score was Bailey Edwards. The second high score was IGW, and the third, the lowest score was EMG Group. So pardon? At this point in time, do we need a motion, Deb, to instruct you to go ahead with the Oh, that's all right, we don't. Yeah. Yeah. There's four. There's four. can we, are we able to go ahead and do a motion to ask you to move forward with the negotiation process? Yeah. All right, do we have a motion to that effect? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Deb, you'll have to write the motion. Thank you. Patsy? Microphone?
On an RFQ, you go to the highest scored to begin the negotiation, but have we established any amount above which you cannot agree to a contract with them? How does this move forward?
I don't think we have, but again, I'll let Deb talk to that point.
You have not, and how could you? Because how do you know what it will cost until, we start negotiating with the top-ranked vendor? So you are commissioning the facilities chair, the facilities director, and the county administrator to enter into those negotiations and do their best. And I believe that any type of cost is going to be based on salary schedules for those people who are providing the services and the number of hours that they will be providing them, so there will be detail. And if it's not acceptable to the board when it's presented, the board can obviously decline it and move on to the second-ranked firm.
Any other questions? If not, I believe a motion to adjourn is now in order, and we'd appreciate that.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you again for all your hard work this evening. We appreciate it.
Good job.